All right, so what are we on today? March 1st. February 1st, March 1st. So today we're doing custom dialog boxes with user forms. So there is a file to download. So let's go ahead and get that downloaded and we'll get it open. And I think we've looked at this data on one prior example. So this is data from like an outdoor sporting goods store. You can buy duck calls here and all kinds of outdoor clothing and whatever. And so the idea here is that we need a way to be able to manage this data. Like when we're editing one product, we look at this product and all this product information is across one row. And if this is the product I'm focusing on, first of all, it doesn't even all fit on the screen. And second of all the rest of the data I see on the screen is just noise. It's just, I'm not focusing on it. It's just kind of getting in my way. So what we're going to do with a user form is we're going to say, all right, let's take that information from the worksheet and let's just display it in a window that we have a lot more control over. So it can take up much more of the screen. We can get the data organized more than just on a row and give some tools to help the user make sure we get the user right. And importantly, when they go to edit that record, we can do all kinds of data validation on it. So when they click on a save button or save that back to the worksheet, we're going to say, well, slow down there, cowboy. You didn't actually put a product name in here, and you kind of have to have a product name. There's some things you could have that you could skip on a product. The name isn't one of them. You've got to have a name. And so being able to do data validation like that is kind of one of the big things that we can do with user forms. So let's just go ahead and get after it. So I'm going to come to my Visual Basic editor. And so do we have any modules? I got module 1. I have no idea what's in module 1. Oh, this is a prior example that we did where we were making those making lists. So we had a procedure that would make lists. That'll come in handy for us for this, but we're not going to be working in a module. We're now going to be working in a form. It looks like I've got a form left over here. That's kind of something like what we're building today. Let's ignore that one. Let's pretend that one's not there. And we will build one from scratch. Now, the way that we get a form is kind of the same way that we would insert a module. I'm going to come up to my tools menu. I'll choose insert, but instead of saying module, I'll say user form. And that will make a brand new user form, kind of a blank slate for me to be able to start designing with. So it's a window. It's a window that we're going to be able to pop up. We'll be able to control through code and be able to work with. So that is that's what we're after today. So I want to make this is a day where we're going to cover out a lot of new things. And so I want to make sure you're with me. So is there anyone who's like saying, hold on a minute, professor, I'm not quite there, but I'd like to follow along. Okay, then let's go ahead and follow along. So the first thing that we want to realize is that a form is an object itself. And so it has methods and properties. And let's go ahead and modify some of the properties of this one. The first one that we're going to modify is the name of the form. So should I zoom in on this? Because we're looking at kind of a small spot here. I'm going to zoom in, even though the Windows Zoom feature is a little bit finicky. Okay, so I've got my user form here, and I've got then all these different properties. Well, the very first one is the name. Now, most of the objects that we've dealt with, I guess some of them we can change the names because we refer to sheets by their name, and we can change the name of the sheet, and then that's how we refer to it. Specifically, we could change the code name, and then we can refer to it directly through code. Well, that's the same thing here. So instead of calling this user form 1, I'm going to call this FRM prod. So this will be my, for showing my information, editing information about a product. Now, you might think that used to say user form 1. So when I change the name of it there, it's going to change up here, but it happens that that's a different property. That's the property called the caption of the user form. So I'm going to change the caption here to be edit of product information. Now we can see that that changed the caption up here that's in the title bar of the form. Okay, now there's a set of tools that we need to work with. And so if we look up, let's see, let me get on the form here. And if some of you may not have this window open, so I'm going to close it. You're going to look up here on your toolbar, and you've got a little hammer here crossed with a wrench. The symbol to me looks vaguely communist. I'm always a little nervous to click on it, but those are the tools that we can use to actually build out this form. And so this little toolbox, this shows us just a handful of the tools that we can work with. And so it seems like there used to be a button here that would let, do any of you have like a little ellipses here where you have like more, where you can go get more tools? Like a choice here? I'm not sure why I don't see that. Anyway, these are the ones we're going to be using in class today. The first one actually is no tool at all. It just says I don't want to actually have any one of these tools. The next one here is the label. The label allows me just to put static text onto the form. The label actually is something that I can change through code, but the user can't change it. From the user's perspective, that text is just, they can't change it. And so what I'd like to do is begin by putting the information about the product number on this. And I'm going to use the label to put the product number. I don't want the user changing the product number. They can change the name, the price, the description, but don't be changing the product number here. And so I'll bring this label in, and then once I've got that tool selected, I will click and drag to build that onto my worksheet. So now I've made another object on the worksheet. It's an object in every sense of the word. It has methods, it has properties, it's got a name. And we're going to change some of the properties of this object as well. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name from label1 to LBL prod. Now it turns out I'm going to have like a product number, the product name, and sometimes I like to have a label that describes, like maybe the product name will put a label on the product name. So I'll have both a label I want to name product name, and I'll have the text box where the user can type something in that I'll want to name product name as well. And for that reason, it's kind of a convention in VBA that when you're building these forms, when you're naming the objects, to use a little prefix in the front of each one so you can tell when you look at your code, what kind of object am I referring to? And so when I see that I'm referring to this in my code, I'll go, oh, LBL prod, that's some label. And it is really helpful to do that. There's kind of a standard set of prefixes, LBL, and I'll use the ones that are standard in the industry today. But the truth is, as long as you kind of come up with your own scheme, that would be just fine. It's mostly that you know what you're talking about when you look at your code. Now, I'm also going to change the background color. I'm not sure why this comes in with an opaque background color. You can kind of see it's covering the grid lines here. But often on these labels, I would like to have them change the background color to be transparent. And so where is that? Oh, here it is. So the back style. So it comes in by default as opaque. And even though I do want this one to be opaque, I almost always want them to be transparent. So it's like transparent's the first thing that I set on this. But this one, I want this to kind of look like a data field. So I want it to have a rectangle around it and maybe a dark gray background to kind of indicate to the user that it's not editable. So I'll go ahead and leave that opaque here, but I wanted to show you that's how you make that background so that it doesn't mask the color of the background color of the form. But let me go ahead and change now the back color. This is a little bit weird here, but the default choices you have for the back color is you can say, oh, just make this the same color as the window text. That's a bad choice because it's black. As highlighted text. I change the background color that way, then if someone changes like their scheme, like their color scheme on Windows, this will change. It's like looking at the default settings in Windows. I don't even know what your options are on Mac for this. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to choose the palette color because we don't care how their system's configured. I want this to be kind of a darkish gray, like a little bit darker than the background. So which one did I choose for that? Like the third one down on the left column of the palette choice. And it's not critical you have the same color as me, but we're setting the background color. I'm also going to put a border around this. I want the border on this to be, instead of none, so border style, if I'm going to change from none to single. And that looks pretty good. That's going to give me, kind of looks like a data field, even though it won't be editable for the user. I think I want to change the alignment of the text as well. So let's see, probably something called horizontal alignment or text align. I forget what it is. Who can find it? Oh, it would help if I had it selected. You see the properties that are available for the object that you have selected. So it's text align. There we go. I'm going to change that to center. And I'm going to put the product number in there. So I'm going to leave it as label 1 here. That's fine, because when I'm going to make it so when this form starts up, we're going to put that label number. We're going to put the product number into it. Okay, so I feel pretty good about getting my first one configured. Now, I keep calling these objects, and they are objects, but they have another term that they go by. These visual objects that we put onto a form, those are called controls. I think that's a really weird name to call them, but that's what they're called. And so when you look here and it says, here's your controls, yep, that's what those are. So all these things that we're putting on the visual objects we put on forms are called controls. And that's the label, static text. The next one is a text box, and this is text the user can change. Well, by default, you can set it up so they can't change it, but the default and the whole indication here is something the user is allowed to change. So I'm going to choose that tool and then click and drag to bring it in. And I'm just going to put the name of the product here. And so we'll configure this one. I'm going to change the name of this one to txt. I'll just call it name, txt name. And I think that's really all I want to change is the name of it. Actually, this looks great, like it's the 1990s, this sunken look on a form, like it makes it look a little bit 3D. It's kind of shaded right here. I don't really care for that. So I'm going to come here to, there's like style or something. So this one of these says sunken. Where is it? Here it is. Special effect. I'm going to change special effect from sunken down to flat. Oop. I think I want a border on it too, then if I do that. So I'll come choose the border style and set that to single. So I think I like that just a bit better. Right. What I'd like to do now is I would like to, let's put a button on, a button to close this form. So there's a couple kinds of buttons. There's this button here that's called a toggle button. And that was someone's great idea of indicating things as yes or no. It's not very good. Instead, we're going to use this one here, command button. Well, the command button is a regular button for us. So I'm going to click that button and draw it down here in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to set the name of that one to CMD save. This will be our save button. And I'm going to change the caption to say save. Oh, I wonder if you can still do that. Used to be if you put an ampersand in front of it, it would make an underscore. It doesn't anymore. Some way to make that into a, like a hotkey. I'm not quite sure what it is. And then I'll do one more thing on this. And there's a property of a button called default. So default right now is false. I'm going to change default to true. Default that makes this the default button. So if the user is working along on this form and they press enter, it will be identical to clicking on this button. So far, so good. Now, so there's like a really big new idea today, and it's this. So far, all the code that we've written, there had to be a way that the user specifically said, I want to run that code, either by finding it in the list of macros and running it, pressing Control-Shift-E or something, or I think we put a button on a form once where you could click it and it would run some code. But in Userforms, there's a new idea called an event. So an event is just something that happens. It's a happening, it's an occurrence on the form. And when a particular occurrence happens to a particular object, the combination of a particular action on a particular object, you can make that automatically run code. And so we're going to do kind of a weird thing here to drive this idea home. So let's go ahead and double click the button here, and that will take us into the module that underlies this form. There's a module built into this form. So when I double click this, when I double click that, it's going to open up something that looks pretty familiar to you. Option explicit, we've got a sub procedure here. And what it's done is it said, okay, listen, I'm betting that you want to write some code that responds when the user clicks this button called CMD save. It's a pretty good guess. That's what you normally would want to do with a button. That's not what I want to do. And so I'm going to look at these two combo boxes up here that I have not looked at before in class. This first one over here is a list of all the places that I can put code. I can either put it attached to one of these objects, or I can just make it like a general sub-procedure, one that I would have to invoke specifically. And I'm going to leave it selected over here as CMD save. But then I have a whole list of events that I can have respond to. So click is one of them. If the user clicks on this button, it'll run some code. But I'm going to choose this one down here, mouse move. And I'll get rid of the one that it wrote for me by default here. So can you guess what a mouse move event is? What is the happening that we're talking about with mouse move event? Yeah, it's when the mouse moves. And so when the mouse moves, it's going to trigger this code, but not when it moves anywhere, when it moves over this button. So if the mouse moves even 1 pixel over this button, we're going to run some code. Question? Are you in module right now? I am not in module 1. I am in the module that's built into the form. So I'm in the form prod code. I'll show you how to get there. Yeah, so I'm assuming that's what you're asking. So if I'm on my form right here, the way I get there is I'm going to select the object that I want to actually, there's a couple ways to get there. One is I can click on this button, upper left-hand corner over here in my Project Explorer. That will open up the code for this. But I almost never do that. In fact, I think that button was there for a decade before I even knew what it was or paid attention to it. The way that I get to it is say, what object do I want to attach some code to? And then just double click the object. And that will open up the module that is built into this form. And it will guess at what sub-procedure you'd like to write. It's going to think, you must want an event sub-procedure. And so it's going to guess here. So this one, because I have created it, it came up, this one again. But if you don't have this created already, if you double click, you've already got CMD save as your object over here. But now you can just come and choose mouse move here, and that will generate that code. And feel free to delete the click. We're going to put some code in that click event, but we'll generate it again when we get to it. Okay, so now this code is going to execute whenever the mouse moves over the button. The mouse can move anywhere else on the form, and it'll have no effect. But if the mouse moves over that button, we're going to do something. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to change one of the properties of my button. So I've got a button called CMD save, and I'm going to change the left property of it. So the left is like where that button is located on the left. This is a weird thing to do. But hopefully it's going to really drive home the idea of an event happening to an object. I'm going to change that to be a random number somewhere, somewhere between 0 and the width of my form. So I've got a form frm prod dot, and I think it's called inside width. There's a width, which is the width of the form, including the border on the outside. I just want the canvas area that I have to work with just on the inside. Do you see what this is going to do? You'll see it if you run it, what it does. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, every time the mouse moves on that button, we're going to change where the button is. We're changing the left property of it. This is not normal behavior for a button, by the way, in case you're wondering. I'm going to click on that, and it says, no, you're not. Now, is it possible for me to click this button? Yeah, it's possible. What has to happen, and it already happened once, it happened so fast, that if I move it so it only moves one, if it happens, there it did it again. If it happens to move under the mouse, and I don't get another mouse move event, I could click it. I'm just going to try it a couple more times. Did you see it? How it kind of double tapped that one? That's because it's really tough to get it to only trigger one. But it doesn't do anything yet. There's nothing on the on click. So it's just when it moves. Okay. So that's like not quite enough for me because I'm also going to change the height. Actually, before I do that, did you notice sometimes it goes kind of off the screen? Yeah, see that? That's because I'm setting the left of it to anywhere between the beginning and the end. And, this game, and by game, I mean watching Edna try to click this button from accounting when she tries to get to this button. It'll be bad if it goes all the way off the screen, which it could. Like it could go to just 1 pixel left over there. So I'm going to subtract off the inside width of the form. Go ahead and close this with my X button up there. So I'm going to take a random position of the width of the button minus the form. And by the way, there's a shortcut to get to form. And it's really a good idea because can you imagine if I was referring to my form lots of different places and I decided to change the name of the form, I'd have to go in and change all the references. So there's actually a little shortcut called me. If I just say me refers to the code that the form that this code is built onto. So it's kind of like this workbook refers to the code the workbook's built in, me refers to the form that the code is in. So I want the inside width minus me dot also inside width. And I can run this just by pressing F5. And so now that I've reduced, oh, something's gone wrong. Inside width minus that should give me all that space. What's that? Oh, I did me. I don't want me on both of those. I want the command button's width. Thank you. CMD save dot width. That's better. But I'm taking the full width of the form and I'm subtracting off the width of the button. So the furthest that it can go to the left is till it's right up against the side of the form. So you'll see it's not going, I can do this all day and it's not going to go off the form. Okay. Let's just go ahead and move it vertically as well. So I'm going to make the top equal to a random proportion of the inside height and the height of the button. So now it'll go anywhere on the form. It's a little bit more fun. Okay, we'll do one more thing, then we'll move on to something that's a little more useful. And I'm gonna write this one, and then we're gonna see if you can figure out what it's doing. Yeah, you just gave me American Sign Language for it. Every time it moves, what's going to happen? It's going to get a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. At first, it'll be unperceptible. It'll be you won't be able to tell. Oh, WIDPH. And then after we do that about 10 times, we're going to go, is that button getting? It is getting. How am I going to get it? Just like, oh no. Oh no. Oh, great stuff. These are good times. Okay. Close this. And because I'm going to try to click on that button a few times today, and I will forget that it does that. By the way, let's go ahead and actually make it close the form, and then we'll put one more thing here. So to make it close the form, I'm just going to actually click on it. When you click on this button, so I'm going to choose the click event over here, and now this will be code that executes when the user clicks on it. And I just want to say me dot. Let's do this. Let me unload me. Unload me. So I can hide a form. If I hide a form, it just makes it invisible, but it's still in memory. So anything the user's typed in, if I hide it, if I show it again, then it's still there. But if I unload it, it completely blows it away. And if I show the form again, it comes back in its brand new state. And so we'll just play this one time. So I want to be able to click on that to, get it to close, I won't be able to do it. Now that it's moving horizontally and vertically, the chance of me actually clicking it is going to be really slim. But how else could I trigger that button? Yeah, enter, because I set up the default value for that. So I press enter now, and it will close the form. Now, today's date, what is it? What is today's date? Now, it is now March 1st, 2/29. Yeah, wow, that's the right time. I am going to ask for the month of this. And that's going to tell me 3. Okay. So I'm going to put a condition around this. I'm going to say if the month of the current time is equal to 4 and the day of the current time is equal to what? I think I heard someone say it. 1. Why? This is April Fool's Day. Then we'll do this and do it. So that button is going to behave like normal every day of the year, except April Fool's Day, and then it's going to dance around the screen. I was on my mission in the late 1980s. We had pretty rudimentary computers like in the mission office. And I was just, kind of getting to play with like batch programming, like kind of low-level programming you would do on an old IBM PC. And I thought, we're going to do something for April Fool's Day when Sister Hansen comes in the office. So went to boot up and it put some kind of error message on the screen that said system failure imminent, place keyboard on top of monitor to allow positive reionization. And she just was so afraid of computers, just did everything that it said without even really thinking about it. So she did that, and then it was like press enter and something, and it was like darn near fatal error avoided. And then it went on to normal. And I made it so that it actually erased itself after it happened. So she won't believe what happened to the computer. Well, what happened? Come show it. Come show us. She turned it on, and it was just like normal. I'm like, oh, we don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're talking about. You can have great fun. You can have great fun. Okay. So let's now go ahead and make it so that we bring data onto the form from whatever cell is the active cell. So when we run this form, let's go ahead and let's first make it so we can press a shortcut key to run the form. So if I want to be able to have code respond to a shortcut key, it's got to be in a general module. So I'm going to come back to module 1 here. And I'll just kind of here underneath my runner over here. Let me just make a sub procedure called open product form. Open product info. And so here's how you open a form. You just say the name of the form, which is frm prod.show. And there's actually an option here. The default for modal is true. It's kind of a weird word, but if you open a form and tell it to be modal, it means that while this form is open, the user's not doing anything else. They got to close this form before they can move on. But if you set the modal property to false, then the form can stay up. They can go back and work in Excel. Your VBA code can keep on running. But if you open it with that set to true or just the default, then it will open up that form and your code will stop right here until that form is done. So let me just debug.print, debug.print, form closed. Yeah, let me go ahead and make this so that I can kind of see that code happening as well. Okay, so if I run this, it opens that, and you'll notice it has not printed form closed because it is waiting right here and for the user to finish this form. When the user finishes this form, then it continues on with the code that I have here. So that's kind of an important thing. When I open up this form in the default way, it suspends my code until it's done. So that's acting like a dialog box, right? That's what happens. You open a dialog box, the user can do whatever they want to on it, they press OK, and then your code continues on. But if I put this as false, clear this out here and run it again, now you'll see it has already printed form closed, even though it hasn't closed. It's just the next line there. But this thing is up here. That means while that's up, I can come back here and work on the worksheet in Excel. There's usually less of a reason to do this than there is to make it modal, but you can do that. I'm going to leave this as a modal form here. Now, I just want to be able to put a keystroke on this. So maybe I'll do a Control-Shift-P. And the way I do that is I'm going to come find my list of macros. So my developer tab, list of macros. I'm going to find that one, open prod info, come to options, and then just put my shortcut key on it here, capital P, and I'll do capital E. That way I can do it with my left hand, and it means edit. Open the product form. So now if I'm on this and press Control-Shift-E, it opens the form. And what I'd like it to do is I would like it to show the name, the current price, the ID for that one right here. That's what I'm after. So question, was there a question? Yeah. The shortcut? Yeah. So we have this. So step one is we have to have a sub-procedure here that's in a general module because I can't invoke a procedure from a form. Well, wouldn't make any sense. I'm trying to open the form in the first place. So it's got to be on a general module. And then the way that I put the shortcut key on is by coming to my list of macros, my developer tab. Oh, by the way, you can also, if you don't have the developer tab, you can still get to the list of macros by coming to the view tab. So if I come to view, macros is my last choice. It'll take me to the same place. So I'll click on that to get my list of macros. And then I choose the macro I'm after, open prod info, and go to options. And then this looks kind of like when you're first recording a macro. It gives you the chance to put a shortcut key on it. You can just come and put one on this way as well. Okay. You bet. No extra charge. All covered in your tuition. All right. So let's go back to the form then. Now, what we want to do, now there's a couple things that we could do. One is we could actually, we can change something about that form out here. Like when product info runs, we could say, put that information on the form and then show it. We could like say, before you show it, actually put the information on. And if there's something that I want to do to the form, only when I open it this way, that's to be the place to do it. But I want this to happen every time the form opens. So if I open it from somewhere else, or if the user just goes and, heaven forbid, should go into VBA and open the form themselves, I still want it to behave this way. And so instead of putting it out here, I'm going to put it on the form itself. So I want you to look at the form here. I'm going to double click the background of the form, not a button or any of these controls. I'll double click the background of that form. And that will give me then the default option for when something happens to the user form. Now, I don't want it to be when it clicks, but this is the right object. So user form is my object. Take a look at the events and think, what would be the right event for me to use so that when this form opens up, I can make some code run to go get the right information off the worksheet and display it. So just take a look at that list of events. What do you think? Read over them and say, I like this one. Don't be afraid to get it wrong. It won't hurt. You'll say it's that, I'll say it's not, and we'll move on. What do you think? Activate. That's a good choice. Now, activate happens every time the sheet becomes active. So if and it would work pretty well. It would work pretty well for our modal form. But if I have a non-modal form and I have two of them open, that's right. Every time I select this one, it would activate and it would trigger that event and then trigger the event. So I want it only when it first comes up. Initialize. Yeah, that's the one. So I'm going to come down here and choose initialize. And I don't want anything for form click. Wouldn't hurt to leave that around, but I'm going to get rid of it just so I'm not as cluttered here. So now user form initialized. When this user form gets initialized, now this code's going to run. Now, what I'd like to do, I think I'd like to make a module level variable to keep track of which row I'm on, because I'm going to have several different procedures running, and I want to be able to easily know what row is the row that we started with. So I'm going to go ahead and set that now, and then I'll go define the variable. Let me just say row equals, and then I'm just going to read the row off the active sheet. activedeshet dot, I'm sorry, active cell dot row. That'll tell me whatever the active cell is, it's got a row property, that'll tell me what the row is. So let me just go ahead and make a module level variable, declare this at the very top of my module. I'm going to say dim row as a long integer. Oh, do you remember when I told you you should always use long for rows because you never know that something might happen and you'll end up going past 32,000 rows. Oh, it was just like last weekend. What was I doing? I was collecting information off of a website. Here's the website. This is great. I just came across this website. It's a fantastic website. I'm making a data set for people learning structured query language to be able to query. So this is a little feel a little bit like an advertisement for this company, Arts Heaven. Never heard of them before. They like make reproductions of like famous pictures. So like you can pay like $300 or $400 and they will like make that picture. Well, I got to be careful what I'm showing here, I guess. Neoclassicism might be a little better. And they will like really like for $300, 24 by 30 inches, they will paint this on canvas. For an extra 15%, they'll make it look old. Anyway, so it's got like tens of thousands of like images here. And we got the name and the artist. And so I'm going to write a program in VBA, by the way, to go to this website and pull this information down so I could have a data set that I could have new learners of database technology to be able to have an interesting data set to query. And I did not imagine there would be more than 32,000 images on this site. There is. And for whatever reason, when I made my row variable, I just made it as integer and it ran for a while. I was like, went home because it took a while to run. You get each image and such. And I came back the next day, thing to be done. No, it stopped at 32,000. Why? I tried to put something that wouldn't fit. So I thought, wow, that would be really great. I'm glad my students didn't see me do that because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. Then I thought it might be good to see that I don't do everything right all the time anyway. So even though I really don't think I'm going to have more than 32,000 of products, I'm going to put row as long because that can handle any value for row. Okay, so now when I activate when I initialize the worksheet, we're going to set that value. We're going to set that value row. I'm going to do a couple more things here. Oh, there are some rows that are not valid. What would be a row that I don't want to be editing the data on? Yeah, I don't want to be editing the names of the columns. That'd be terrible. And so the way it is right now, if I just open that form and just read off the row, it's going to put all this header information in for the data. Oh, I don't want that. I got a couple of options. One, I could say, look, if the row is 1, don't do anything else. We're done. Or what's another option? If the row is 1, then I'll just change it to 2. If you're trying to open it up there at the top, let's just open it on the second one, which is the one I like. Let's do that. So maybe I'll go ahead and set row to there. And then I'm going to say if row is less than 2, then row equals 2. I guess I could say if row equals 1, because that's my only option for a row number that's less than 2, but I'll do it this way. Where else would be invalid? $862 would also be invalid. But I expect to get more products. So I don't want to hard code 862 in here. So why don't I do this? Why don't I say if, and then in my worksheet, this worksheet has a name. I think it's called data. Let's see. Yeah, data is the name of the worksheet. If data.cells, row number row, column number 1, dot value is equal to a 0-length string, then I'll set it something else. And I want it to be just the very last one. Ooh. So I'm going to say row is equal to, look at the very last row, data.rows dot count, data.rows dot count. Yeah. So that data.rows dot count will give me like 1.04 million, because that's telling me how many rows there are on the data sheet. That's the very last row. So very last row, first column, from there do end XL up, and then ask for the row event. XL up dot row. So now if I'm outside of the range of data where my products are, when I open this form, it's going to say, well, you're too low, but we'll give you the last product. Oh, you're too high, we'll give you the first product. And now I think I'm ready to show my data. And I don't think I want to put that here in initialize. So initialize, I really just want this to be, it would work to put it here in initialize, but I really just want this to be what it takes to get myself going. And so I'm going to make another, I'm going to call a sub, I haven't made it yet, but I'm going to call a sub procedure here. I'm just going to say show data. So let's go ahead and make that sub procedure. I'm going to do it at the very top. It doesn't really matter where I put it. I'm going to put it at the very top. So sub show data. Now, we don't have to tell it which row to look at because we have set row as a module level variable. So we can look at row from here. We'll set it down there. We'll look at it here. When we go to save the data, it'll be a different sub procedure. We'll just look back to the module level variable there as well. All right, so now I'm ready to read the data using the row variable and plug it onto my form. Well, the first thing that I want to do is put the ID in there. We come up here. So product ID here is in column number 1. So I made an object to hold the ID. I remember it was called LBL ID because I have done this example dozens of times. But if I forgot, there's a little trick I can do. I can say me, remember me gets me to this form. When I hit dot, it's going to say, oh, here's all the things you could do for this form. And if I remember, I know it's a label, so I would have named it LBL. So I'll type LBL. And then it's taken me to that. And then I can see, oh yeah, that's what I called it, LBL. The truth is, I don't need the word form in front of it. I could leave it there. I mean, I don't need me in front of it. I could leave it there. And sometimes I leave it there, sometimes I take it out. But that gets me to that object. That object, its name will work even without the prefix on front of it. Now, I've got all kinds of properties I can change. Ooh, boy, look at these properties. Which property do I want to change to change what's showing? Accelerator, auto size, back color, back style. Ooh, border style, cancel. Caption, the same thing we used to change what was showing on the form. That's the one. So lblprod.caption equals, I've got a sheet called data.cells, row number row, column number 1. And I want the value of that. That will just read the value off of whichever row I've said, and it's going to put it right there into the caption property of that control. My name, I think, is in column 5. So I'm going to change this on this side to be column 5. And then instead of caption, I want to do me.txt. Oh, there it is, txt name dot. And there are 2. There's either text or there's value. The truth is, in 1995, there was no value. It was only text. But people were like, hey, how come there's no value for this? And so text or value is going to do the same thing for us. Either one will work. So now when I run this form, it should actually come up with the name and the ID, whatever product I'm on. So I'll come down to line number 14. I got some product called, oh, I think I put the current price in. The name is not 5, it's 6. Name is 6. That should bring up the Canada Goose floater. Sounds like a great thing. Control Shift E. Now it opens up with whatever product I'm on. Sleeping Mallard. Sleeping Mallard. And this is editable. The user could change it. Sleeping Beauty. And if I click save, what's that going to do to my cell? Absolutely nothing. Because we haven't written the code to do that yet. That's next. Should we do it? Let's do it. All right, so I've got show data here. I'm going to copy that one because it's pretty close to what we're going to need to do for saving the data. And I'm going to, instead of calling it show data, I'll call it save data. Now, because the ID, the product ID is not editable, there's no reason to have any line of code for that one, so I'm going to delete it. Now, when I'm reading the data off of the sheet and putting it on the form, this is the line that does it, right? This says, look at what's on the sheet, put it what's in the form. How am I going to write it from the sheet, or from the form back to the sheet? Yeah, just swap those sides. That's it. I'm going to put what's into the, I'm going to go into a particular cell. Which one? Whatever row we've set up, and column 6 is now going to be whatever was in the text property of that box. Now it really will edit that. So now if I come and change Sleeping Mallard to Sleeping Beauty, we're there. Enter, we'll do it. Ah! Oh, we haven't actually triggered the code yet. So we've got the sub procedure here. We have to tell it to run. So on command click, right before we unload, we probably should tell it to call save data. Sleeping Mallard, this is your last chance. Boom, Sleeping Beauty. Now, our whole, like one of the main reasons we're making a user form here, it's like an advanced dialog box and put up all the information here, be able to correct it, is we want to be able to do data validation. And so let's go ahead and add a little data validation. So maybe we'll do that on the click. Like before we get to save data, let's check to make sure if we, now let's do it at the top of this. I'll do it right here. So we're going to come into save data, and before I actually do the saving, I'm going to say, no, I think I want to do it down below. So when you click, before I go to say save data, I'm going to say, are we allowed to save the data? I think this is the better place to do it. So, and I might say, you know what, to be a name, you've got to have at least 3 characters. We're not going to have any name of a product. It's only 2 characters long. I'm trying to do something. I had a co-author when I was on the faculty at Tulane University named Janan Wu. Last name was Wu, W-U. And I don't remember what I was trying to do. Something. I was trying to put his name in somewhere. Maybe it was like on a conference presentation. You know, I had to put in his name. And I'm trying to put in Wu, and they said, sorry, last names have to have at least 3 letters. Really? I wasn't quite sure what to do. I don't remember what I did. Sorry, that's a bad story. Anyway, so, you know, could we end up with a product that really only has 2 characters? Yeah, I can imagine something being called the A4 or something. But for this example, we're going to say you got to have at least 3 characters in your name. So I'm going to do this. Right when you say click, before I go to save data, I'm going to say if, and I'm going to look at what's in that form. So me.txt name.text, and I want to know how long that is. So I'm going to use the len function. If the length of that is less than 3, then we got a problem. What are we going to do? I'm going to put up a message box that says name must have at least 3 characters. Okay, so that's good. We'll show a little message box for the user. Now here's the important part. Exit sub. Why do I want to exit the sub here? If I don't exit the sub, if I just show up that message box, the user is going to click, it's going to stop the code until the user clicks OK. The user is going to click OK, and what's it going to do? It's going to save the data. The whole point, I'm trying to tell not to save the data until they've passed all the validation checks that I'm going to put in here. So now, if I come in here, Control-Shift-E, and try to change this to the A4 and save, you got to have at least 3 characters. And so because I'm exiting the sub procedure here, I'm not going to hit save data. And importantly, I'm not going to hit unload me. So that's going to keep it right here. So I can't. Now, could I close this without making the change? Yeah, this one will just close the form without executing that code at all. So that's kind of a nice little cancel button there. We can put another cancel. People like to see a cancel button. We could put a cancel button. Should we put a cancel button on? If we have time. we will, but let's go ahead and move on to some other controls. So any questions on what we've done so far? By the way, I can get back to my form either by closing my module here. Oh, I stopped my code. Yeah, my code is stopped. I can double click on the name of the form here, will bring it up. But if I'm looking at the code, then these two buttons let me toggle between the form and the code. So that takes me to the form, that takes me back to the code. Those can be kind of handy. All right, what do we got next? So we've got the name, we've got the product. We can do the price. The price is just going to be another text box. You can be able to type. So we've seen how to do a text box. Let's move on to something different. I think we got time to do this. So what I'd like to do is I would like to look at over here on my lists. What did we build? We'd make a list of, yeah, we got a list of departments. There's only 4 departments. There's a lot more manufacturers. Let's do manufacturer next. So I'm going to put on a label for manufacturer, just so it makes it clear that we're talking about the manufacturer. Bring a label on. I'm going to change the background to transparent. Back style. That's the border style. Back style. Transparent. I'm going to change the caption. Now this one is truly static. I'm not going to change this through the code. The user's not going to change it. Because I'm not going to ever refer to this in my code, I am happy to leave the default name on it. I change the name of these objects so when I see them in my code, I know what we're talking about. So I'm not going to worry about changing the name, but I am going to change the caption just to be manufacturer. That's not quite big enough. Now, for the manufacturer, I definitely don't want to use a checkbox for a text box for the manufacturer. If I put a text box in there, who knows what people are going to type in? I want them to pick from the list of manufacturers that we've got. So you can't get this wrong. And so to do that, I'm going to use a thing called a combo box. It's called a combo box because it's a combination of a text box and a list box. The list box just gives you a list that's open all the time. A combo box gives you the ability to type something in, or you can drop down and see the list. And so the combo box is this guy right here. It's the next one. I'm going to bring the combo box in. And I'm going to name it CBO MFR. CBO MFR. Oops. CBO MFR. MFR, like short for manufacturer. If I was a better typist, I might call it CBO manufacturer, but I had a pretty hard time just getting those 6 characters right. So shorter is better for me. All right, so let's go look at what we're going to want to do to initialize this. This is going to be a little more complex to initialize. Let me come back to my forms initialize. User form, I don't want initialize, sorry. I want when I'm showing the data. All right, so here we're putting the product name in. This is a little more complex. So I'm going to go ahead and put a comment in here, load the manufacturer, CBO MFR. Okay, it's actually going to be pretty easy to get the name of the manufacturer off the worksheet. Because it's a combination of a text box and a list box, I can put the default in the same way I do a text box. So I'll just say me.cbo manufacturer.text is equal to wherever the manufacturer is. I don't know where the manufacturer is. Manufacturer is column D. In fact, I could put column D here. Okay. All right. So now when I run my form, Control-Shift-E, I get the manufacturer, cut down calls. But I'm only partly configured because I haven't told it what to be in the list to choose from yet. And I got to get that for my list of manufacturers, which is the whole reason that we went through the trouble to build a list of manufacturers in a prior example. So on my list page is where my manufacturers are. So that's called lists. So that's going to select the one that's there. But now let's go ahead and put the choices. Build the list. So I need to make a loop that's going to start here on 2 and go until we run out of data. Wow, 138. So let me go ahead and get some variables for that. Dim r as a long integer. And just do a loop. I'll set r equal to 2. Do until lists dot cells r comma e is where my list of manufacturers is. Do until lists r comma e dot value. Now the way that we've done to see if it has a particular value, if it's blank, is to say, does it equal 0 length string? That way works really great. There's another way to do it. I just want to expose you to it. It is marginally faster than doing a comparison between 2 strings. And that is a function called isEmpty. Do until until. So this is going to have the same effect as if I said do until the value equals a 0 length string. They're both going to be empty. And when I say faster, I mean on an order of a couple of milliseconds. But if you're doing something, if you're doing checks, tens of thousands of checks, this will be a little bit faster. Loop. Every time I make a do loop, I'm always going to put do events. It's easy to let a do loop get out of control. I'm going to increment r to give myself a way out. R equals r plus 1. Okay, and so now when I'm on that particular one, I just want to load that into the list. Oh boy, there's going to be a whole long list of properties for me to look through to see what it is. I'm going to me.cbo manufacturer dot. Now I got to look through the whole list of properties and methods to find which one is going to add a new item into my list. Oh, glorious day. It's the first one. I didn't have to look at all. There it is, add item. And then this is a method. And so I'm going to give it an argument for what do I want it to supply. And it's just whatever one we're currently looking at. So this loop is going to iterate until I run out of manufacturers, and each time it's going to add. You can call the add item method my combo box to put the manufacturer into the list. This should give me the list to choose from. So now I'm going to come back. If I can do one more thing, when I press, I'm going to do this in module 1. So when I press Control-Shift-E, put a comment here, CTRL Shift E runs this. Someone presses Control-Shift-E and they're not on the product sheet. What should we do? A couple of options here. Nothing, or activate the product sheet. Which one do you like? Yeah, I like nothing too. It's less code to write. But in development, I'd kind of like it. You know what? If I'm testing this and I happen to be over here on my list sheet and I press Control-Shift-E, I'd like to go over there to the one I actually want to be on. So let me go ahead and do that. We'll do that approach. So if I should just activate the sheet. So I got a sheet called data.activate. So just make sure it's active. If it's already active, this has no effect. If it's not active, it'll activate the sheet, and then we'll be off and running. So now if I'm here and press Control-Shift-E, I should go to activate that sheet and then show my form up here. And the whole point is now I got the list. Probably should alphabetize that list. So I won't do with code, but I will alphabetize it right here. Sort that A to Z, expand it, no. Continue. So now Control-Shift-E, and I've got those in alphabetical order. Oh, nice, I even started with the one that was in there. Okay, questions on the combo box? Oh, we need to make it so that when you save, it goes back, just like the text box. This one's in-class exercise. No in-class exercise. I got one more thing to cover today. I'm going to come back to my form. And on save, come back up to save data. It's going to be just like this, because I can read the value out of it just the same way I read out of a text box. So column number 4 now is going to equal me.cbo manufacturer.text. Okay, so now if I change the manufacturer on this from cut down calls to Dickies, then that gets changed as well. All right, last example, which I think we might be able to do in 10 minutes. I want to show you another way to make a choice, to make a choice from a small set of options. This takes me 2 clicks, maybe click, scroll, click to be able to choose the manufacturer here. I'd like to be able to put a way here that I could just pick it with a single option. And here's a way to do that. So it's going to be with a set of radio buttons. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring on this thing. This is called a frame. And a frame is going to group my option. They're called actually technically called option buttons. I'm going to group my option buttons together. So if I have like 3 sets of option buttons, they'll be logically grouped by being in a frame. So I'll be able to select one of each of those if they're all in different frames. If I have 3 sets of option buttons and they're not in a frame, I can only pick one of those on the form. So putting it in a frame is going to allow me to group it. I only have one, so I can get by without the frame here, but I'm going to put the frame on. If I don't want the frame to be there visually, I can style it so that it's invisible, but I am going to almost always put option buttons inside of a frame. And let me go ahead and change. This is going to be for the department. Now, this is going to be a short choice because there's only 4 departments. I wouldn't want to make a list of option buttons for manufacturers because it would be huge. I'm much better off saying let it drop down. But with only 4 departments, I like it. The other thing that's nice about the combo box is that if we add new manufacturer under the list, it's working. This code will work. What we're about to do with these option buttons, if we add a new department, we got to change the code to make it work. So just realize that's your option. All right, so let me go ahead, come here and change the caption on this frame to be department. And now I'm going to put into here 4 option buttons. So my option buttons is this one right here. Looks like a little bullseye. I'm going to select that and I'm going to drag that. I'm going to click and drag to create that right here inside. I think I probably want them a little bit bigger. And then I'm just going to copy that. I can make it a little shorter. I'm going to copy that 4 times. So just select it, copy, and then paste. All right, so I now have 4 different option buttons, and I'm going to change the label on them so that they match the label that we have in our department. By the way, could we make this dynamic so that if we add a new department, it would automatically change this? Yeah, we could create all of these controls when we load the form. It's way beyond what you want to see on the first day. So it's possible to make these dynamic, but it's much more involved. Okay, so I'm going to come and select this. I'm going to change the name. So this is going to be OPT hunting. I'll change the caption while I'm at it, hunting. Choose my next one. Name on this one, OPT outdoor. Caption's going to be outdoor. This is general. Caption is general. OPT apparel. And my caption. Okay, so these now, I select them all, I'd kind of like to move those all up. Now, if I run this, F5 will just launch it from here. Then they work already as option buttons. So when I select one, it automatically unselects the others. That's nice. But we need to make it so that it comes up with the right one selected. Because if I'm over here on, somewhere here in the hunting section, Control-Shift-E, none of them are checked right now. So when we're showing the data, we're gonna need to make a choice here. So form initialize, show data. Let's go ahead and do the department. All right, so the department is in column B. This is kind of made for a select case statement. Select case. And we're going to look at column B. So our current row on our data, looking at column B, and we're looking at the value. It's going to be this should only, I expect that to be only one of four things. Put my end select on, case, and now here, let's put those choices, hunting. What are we going to do if it's hunting? Well, if it's hunting, what we're going to say is OPT hunting dot value equals, what do you think the valid values are for an option button? True and false. Set that one to true. And it won't matter what it was before, because by setting one of them to true, whether you do it with a click or through code, it will unset the others. So I've got hunting, I've got outdoor, I've got apparel, and then I've got one more for general. But if I made it all the way to here and it wasn't hunting, outdoor, or apparel, guess what? It's general. So now it should come up. It should come up correctly. So Control-Shift-E. Didn't like something. Okay, this is actually kind of a nice error to have. Because if I've got a problem when that form is trying to initialize, I'll get the debug message and it's going to take me right here. This is not in my form at all. Where is this? This is my general procedure. So how am I going to get to see where the error is? Any guesses? We learned about it like a week ago or more. Yeah, we'll step into it. So if I press F8, or I can choose debug, step into, this is now going to take me through. It's going to take me right to where the error is. Now, unfortunately, when the error happens, it's going to take me right back to where I was before. But at least if I'm watching, I can see where it happens. Uh-oh, that's going to be a while. I don't want to do all those. That's going to load through up all those. Ooh, I'm going to put a breakpoint here and then just run to there. Press F5. Take that breakpoint off and keep going again. Because I think it's going to happen right here. F8, there it was. Okay. Object define. Oh, yeah, look at this. I got my column 4 over here in quotes. That's no good. It's not column 4 anyway. Where is it? It's column 2. Is it column 3? Oh, it's column 3. So I can either put C in quotes or I can put 3, but I can't mix the quote, the number, and the quote. So there is no column label for it. So I'll change that to C. Okay, that came up as hunting. Excellent. Let's come out of hunting. Let's go to general, outdoor, Control-Shift-E. I want outdoor, general, apparel. Ah, it's a miracle. And of course, the user can change this. For save, we're going to do something similar for save. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it. If you have to leave, I know we got like 1 minute, and it'll take me probably about 3 minutes to do this. I'm just going to come here. When they click save, click. What are we going to do? We're going to say if OPT hunting dot value, it's true or false. Remember, it itself is true or false. So if it's checked, that will be true. Then we're going to say that same page equals hunting. Where did we load it? Here it is. Then that value equals hunting. Else if it's something else, else if else. And if. So now we're just going to check to see if it's hunting, then we'll set the value to hunting. If, what's our next one? Outdoor. Then we'll set it to outdoor. If it's apparel, then we'll set it to apparel. Otherwise, we'll set it to general. And that should do it. Control-Shift-E. I'm going to change that from apparel to outdoor, and it changes. So a little more involved to do those option buttons, but that gives us that kind of normal style of having those, sometimes called radio buttons, because you choose one, unchooses whatever else was chosen. Okay, we're going to pick up on this same example here when we get together next week. So let's call it good for there. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed. And it didn't take me 3 minutes. It took me 2 minutes.